All right, shalom, shalom to the nation of Israel, shalom. All right, this is your brother Kazakia out of Great Millstone, New Orleans, coming at you with another lesson through the spirit and power, Yahweh Shimon Shah. Right, we're probably getting started. We want to give all infinite honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shah, Ba'ashem, Harachakadash. Double honor to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone who rule and teach well. Peace, blessings, and salutations be to the hopeful elect scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. All right, and the title of today's lesson is going to be "Put the Boots on the Ground ASAP." Okay, that's the title of today's lesson. Is going to be "Put the Boots on the Ground ASAP." All right. So, as we're coming closer and closer by the day, okay, nearing the coming of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Yahweh sending his son Yahweh Shai, we're going to get into more and more climatic moments of World War III, man. Okay. And we're seeing that the United States has deployed, uh, a number of troops, okay, over there to basically, fight Israel's war. And we're going to go into it just a little bit, all right? And I have this article here. We may get all of it, we may not get all of it, but we'll go through, we'll move in the spirit, through the spirit of power, Yahweh Shemon Shai. Okay, and it says, the United States is drawing up possible ground assault plans on Iran, but Israel is reportedly sitting out the war. Okay, so basically, the United States troops, okay, its military is basically the workhorse, for Israel, man. Okay, they're the scapegoat, the sacrifice. Okay, because that's ultimately what you're telling the U.S. to do, is to sacrifice their military and their troops, okay, and their lives to basically fight your war. And people are gonna go for this, okay, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, some people won't go for it, right? Because it's easy to say now, all right, that it's okay to do it. You don't hear a big pushback, right? But when you start to have widows, okay, when you start to have brothers and sisters losing their mothers, their fathers, okay, so on and so forth, whatever element of family, okay, that is lost, okay, and those numbers begin to grow, all right, that's when, the nation's going to want to have a pushback, okay, an outcry, all right. Now, I want to get this real quick. It says the Pentagon is currently drawing up detailed plans for a potential ground assault on Iran. It says, however, Israel is expected to largely stay out of any open ground involvement in such an operation. Okay, this says the White House has not yet publicly confirmed that President Donald DJ Nero, okay, 47, it says has approved any ground operations. Okay, and we saw them, sending over, a bunch of troops, man, by the thousands. Okay, so you don't send over, which I was watching a video before with a guy, and he was talking about, these different units that was being sent over there, man. And he was like, you don't send over these different units, okay, just for no reason, okay? Or no, you send it over in case, things don't go your way. You can have an immediate plan of action, okay? All right, now it says, even without direct ground involvement, Israel has already played a significant role in shaping conditions for potential ground operation. Greg Roman, executive director of the Middle East Forum, it says, pointing out that the first 3 days of the war were crucial for softening Iranian territory. He explained that early U.S.-Israel strikes were designed to prepare the ground for future land forces by destroying Iran's leadership. Okay, and we see these, these devils, okay, they're playing their games, right? They're going through the different art of war, okay, because he's not, let's face it, he's not going to fight you straight up, right? He's going to use these, different drones, missiles, technology, okay, to get at you, man. He's trying to hit you from over a mile away, 3,000, 3,000 plus miles in the sky, man. You know, he's planning these attacks and you'll never see it coming, right? Which really goes into him just being a friggin' coward, okay? Because only a coward would do something like that. I'm gonna go to war with you, but I'm gonna press a button from my living room and you'll be toast, you know. But we're gonna continue on, okay? And it says, according to the Middle East Monitor, Israeli defense sources have also reportedly provided the U.S. with crucial intelligence on key strategic locations like the Strait of Hormuz and nearby islands. It says, including Karag Island, as the U.S. prepared for a possible operation in those areas. Now, I remember they mentioned this island before. I'm not 100% sure if they're stationing people there, but I believe so. Okay, and I believe that can't remember the guy's name in whom the video I was watching. He was like, "There's no way from this place, this Karag Island, if you were to station people there, you will be able to efficiently and strategically wage war, right? It'd be like sending the people to a sacrifice, okay? Now, it says that, uh, the Israelis has laid out a what they call that. They basically gave them a blueprint, okay, on different key places they could hit, and strategically break that place down, okay. Which we know for sure is total BS, man. There's no way. Now, I want to get this real quick. Let me see. Do I have it pulled up? I actually do. All right. Now this is just from some news, basically from ChatGPT, but it says a question I asked. It said how long was the U.S. in Afghanistan? It says United States was in Afghanistan for about 20 years. Timeline starts at October 7, 2001. The United States launched military operations after the September 9/11 attacks. It ended in August 30th, 2021. It says final U.S. troops withdrew, ending the war. Okay, this is the total duration. It says 19 years, 10 months, and 23 days, usually rounded to, roughly 20 years, okay? Give or take. It says the conflict is often referred to as the war in Afghanistan. It says part of the broader war on terror, right? Which was BS, man. They told you that these people had weapons of mass destruction, okay? That, they had the same thing they're doing right now, right? They say they don't want, Iran with nuclear capabilities, okay, in hopes to take out its nuclear arsenal, okay, and its facilities that house and builds these things, okay, these nuclear weapons. The physicists, they even into taking out basically the leadership, causing a so-called regime change, okay. But they that's what the U.S. did, right? Okay, we're going to go to the second part. It says, how much bigger is Iran to Afghanistan in landmass? It says, here's a clear comparison of landmass between Iran and Afghanistan. Total land area, Iran, 1,648,194 kilometers. It says Afghanistan, 652,230 kilometers. How much bigger? It says Iran is about 996,000, okay, kilometers larger. That means Iran is roughly 2.5 times bigger than Afghanistan. Okay, and it says Afghanistan is only about 40% of the size of Iran, or flipped. It says you could fit Afghanistan inside Iran about 2.5 times. I got all that to say this. You know you know the United States fought in Afghanistan for basically 20 years and accomplished absolutely nothing in 20 years. Now you're going to go fight people with more tech, more capabilities, more soldiers, more power all around, right? That's way more structured, okay, in a landmass that's 2.5 times bigger, okay, based on basically Israel's scope of the land and what would be the best things for its strategic war plans for you to do. You know, that's that's stupid, man. Okay, and what I'm saying is it's highly improbable that you would have the ability to win the war in the first place. Okay, because there's still a lot of soldiers, crying out about them wasting their time over there, man. And I'm speaking about Afghanistan. Okay, now I want to get this real quick. We could take this off. All right, this is Ecclesiastes 3 and verse 8. All right, it says a time of love and a time to hate. Okay, and we're in that time, of people going up against each other, man. There ain't no love, man. The love of it say the world is waxing cold, man. The love of many is waxing cold out here. Nobody don't care about their neighbor, man. Okay, everybody's looking out for themselves. All right, and it says a time of war and a time of peace, and that's what we into, right? That's the main part of the verse we wanted to get. A time of war, man. Okay, and this war must happen through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay, because it's prophecy. Okay, many lives will be lost in this war, and if you send boots on the ground to Iran, which that is a part of the plan of Yahweh Shema Shai, okay, that's going to be a lot of lives lost, man. All right, a lot. I think the brothers posted in the chat an article that said up to like 50K, if I'm not mistaken, Marines. Okay, probably going into, people that's into tech. All right, infantry, and these different, MOSs that's going to put them in harm's way, and ultimately, they're going to be, destroyed, right? If you're going over there to fight in this third world's war and you're in the military, you're not coming back home, man. All right. Let's, try to continue on a little bit more here. Probably get a little bit more. It says, Israel ground forces are needed at home, not in Iran. It says, despite these contributions, Israel, I didn't read it. Slacking. It says, despite these contributions, Israel is not expected to send its own soldiers into open ground combat in Iran, according to the Times of Israel, Blaise Mistal. It says, Vice President for Policy at the JOO Institute of National Security of America. It says drew a parallel to Operation Desert Storm in 1991, noting that Israel did not participate in ground operations in Iraq even after sustaining Scud missile attacks. It says Mistel believes it is unlikely that should there be any U.S. ground operations against Iran. It says the IDF would participate overtly. Yeah, they ain't gonna be there, man. It says the reasons for Israel staying out this time are different from 1991. It says back then the U.S. asked Israel to step aside to avoid upsetting its Arab coalition partners. It says, but Mistel emphasized that this time around, that is not a concern. The current constraints are mostly operational, right? And it says not diplomatic. Back in Washington, DJ Nero, okay, 47 presidency continues to draw scrutiny on multiple fronts, with Major Taylor Greene recently blasting DJ Nero 47 over a controversial pardon, adding to the political noise surrounding his ministry. Okay, and this is just a quick post um, that was up here. It says, and you know who that guy is, Netanyahu, not a Jew, not, whatever, Salaki. You know who this guy is, okay? Not gonna say his full name or whatever. It says, Channel 12 reports that if the United States launches a ground operation in Iran, Israeli troops will not take part in that combat, right? In the combat. So, right, you're seeing what's going on, man. Your people being led, okay, to a slaughter. I'm gonna read. It's like I'll catch this little post right here too, real quick. All right, and it says Israel says the soldiers won't join any United States ground operation in Iran. The question is, why not? You're the one uh, who's fighting, okay? Now the reason is because they say that we got to stay back, okay, and defend home, right? We basically got to defend the home front, right? We're gonna get that too in just a second. It says Channel 12 reports the IDF is sitting this one out if boots hit the ground. It says Israel will reportedly keep bombing from the air, but won't send troops 1,000 miles into Iranian territory. And you can see, the two guys up here, one being DJ Nero Trump. He's like, what are you talking about? Or whatnot, right? And this is another war tactic, okay, to get the people mad, right? When the U.S. start losing lives, man, right? And this is something that that happened during what I wanted to say, Slovakia. What was it? Basically the war on terror. Okay, the war in Afghanistan. The people were mad enough to actually go to war because of what happened. Right? They lost thousands of lives. Okay, and guess what? That made the American people mad enough to actually go to war, man. Okay, but this time around, okay, they're doing it through the art of war. Okay, which is, okay, I'm actually going to send troops in there and they're going to be completely destroyed, right? And at the X amount of lives lost, I may be able to amp the people up to actually go to war and for the sake of revenge. Okay, now I'm gonna get this real quick. I'm gonna get that too. All right. This is basically how many people was in Israel, the IDF army. Okay, and it says approximately 169,500 is active duty personnel and around 465,000 in reserve, man. So basically, it says bringing the total potential trained manpower to over 600,000. The military heavily relies on conscription of young adults with the active force comprising soldiers. Okay, let's open that up a little bit. Soldiers, officers, and support staff, all staff across all branches. Okay, and you see that, and that's really, to be honest with you, that's a relatively small military, man. Okay, that's a small, military, and this dog is the one that's barking and now biting. First they were barking, now they're biting, you know. Okay, but what I'm saying is, you really, you really don't even have the personnel, okay, to go to war like that, you know, with these different countries and make all these different demands and say you're gonna do this and that, you know. But let's get this one here, right? Same thing looked up for the United States military. It says as of late 2025, the United States military has approximately 2.11 million total troops. It says this force consists of roughly 1.33 to 1.34 million active duty service members and around 770,000 to about 800,000 reserve and National Guard personnel, man. So that, yeah, like I said earlier, they're gonna use the U.S. military as a workhorse and staple, okay, to carry out their planned attacks, man. What they want to do. That's why they're not gonna be on the ground, because they don't really have the personnel to be on the ground. They don't have the numbers. You know, the king. The scriptures tell you the king got to count the cost, whether he be fit enough to go to war and battle and win. Okay. And then they didn't. Well, they are counting the cost, but at Salakia, they are counting costs, but at the expense of American soldiers, man. You're disposable, so to speak. Your lives are disposable, right? And we're going to see that great number, right, which is in prophecy, great number of people, is going to be destroyed, man. Okay? Now let's go get another scripture, real quick. Let's do this one here. All right, this is Joel 2 and verse 20, and it says, "But I will remove far off from you the northern army, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate." And that's basically, this here region, Saudi Arabia, as you can see, that will be the land that's barren and desolate. Okay, And let's go back and read. And it says, with his face toward the east sea, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. Okay. And that east sea, basically, you can see is a Persian Gulf, and the hindermost part is the Red Sea. Now, a lot of the action will basically happen because the scriptures do mention the Euphrates River, okay, which is being dried up. And as a matter of fact, I'll get that in a minute, but it speaks on that. Okay, the Lord has done this. I'll come back to that. See, it's should be all right. This is Revelation 16 and verse 12, and it says, "And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared." Right. So we're seeing that. Okay, we're seeing that that's happened. Okay, the Euphrates River is basically, dried up, so that these different nations can move their equipment across and wage war, man, for the battle of Jehoshaphat. Okay, Yahweh Shaphat. Okay, and let's go back to that previous verse real quick. All right, this is and it says, "And his stank shall come up." All right, and his ill savor shall come up, because he have done great things. Okay, so a lot of people are going to die over there in World War III. Okay, at the Battle of Armageddon. Okay, all right, a lot of troops are going to die over there. Right, and that's through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shimon Shai. It's prophecy. Okay, so you sending your troops over there just completes more prophecy. You think that they would think of a way or try to think of a way not to complete prophecy, But every single action they are doing, okay, every single thing that they're doing through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai is because the Lord wants them to do it. I mean, the prophecies are rolling off the pages, man. They're moving. It's alive. It's lively. Okay, and it's a beautiful thing to see, man. It truly is. All right. All right, let's go here. We're gonna get this precept. All right, this is Ezekiel 38 and verse 3, and say, "Thus saith the Lord God: Behold, I am against thee, O God, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal." It's like it. And it says, "And I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth and all thine army." It says, "Horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords." Right? So the Lord is going to bring Russia back to that, Cold War, that Soviet USSR, that Soviet Union type of spirit, man, where they're going to be about war. Okay, men of war. All right. And verse 5, it says Persia. Okay, and I bring this out because, the modern day Persians are the Iranians. Okay. It says in Persia, okay, Ethiopia and Libya are with them. All of them with shield and helmet, right? All of them with basically weapons of war, right? Ready to go to war, man. Okay? Ready to fight. Ready to bring themselves to the battle, man. Okay? So what I'm saying, all of this is prophetic, okay, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai. Okay? Russia, is going to be a guard to these nations, okay? But they're going to join the fight too and battle against the U.S., battle against, Israel, man. All right? But, yeah, there's more on that article, okay? But I'm not going to get all of it, for the sake of time or whatever, But because, you get the point, all right, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai. But hey, look, what they're telling the troops, to go and do is just basically to sacrifice themselves, man. Can't say that one word where you unalive yourself, but the meaning of the meaning of the word, unalive yourself, do the job, that's what you'll be doing, fight for me, die for me, it really should be the slogan, so to speak. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shai, Yahweh Bashimon Shai. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying to the hopeful elect. The title of today's lesson was "Put the Boots on the Ground ASAP," man. Because we want to, have all hell break loose. It's a part of prophecy, right? It's a part of putting us closer to our Lord and Savior Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, man. Okay. So, with that being said, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying first and foremost to the hopeful elect. Prior to getting out of here, we want to give all infinite honor and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Kakadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles at Great Millstone who rule and teach well. Peace, blessings, and salutations be to the hopeful elect, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, all right? Kwam Yasha Allah, Ababa Ball, Shalom.